to Garden Girl. My name is Breanna. Today I'm going to talk about planning your garden. And to help us do this, I'm going to be featuring my garden planner. So this garden planner I designed this year. So it's 8 pages and it's $3.99 on my website. So it's relatively reasonable. And you download it and then you can print it off as many times as you want. And it's really helpful to help plan your garden. So today we're going to go over some helpful tips on planning your garden. So let's get into it. So before we start, I wanted to show you a tea that I've been really enjoying. And this is called Tea's Focus and Flow Tea. And it's honestly become one of my favorites. Recently I just started drinking it. And I'm not usually a caffeine drinker in the mornings. Coffee in general creates a lot of, I can get anxious quite easily and with it, and I get the coffee jitters, as they say. But I usually drink a lot of green matcha, but I find sometimes even that's too much caffeine for me in the mornings because I'm a naturally energetic person. So I find this one has been really good. It actually does have caffeine in it, because I still find it really helps to have a little bit of caffeine in the morning. But this one has just the right amount, I find. And it's a great alternative from drinking matcha all the time. It's a lot lighter. So it has yerba mate in it, and it also has ginseng and ginkgo leaves in it. So it has the energy from the yerba mate, which is really good alternative for caffeine. Like it has a lot of caffeine in it, and it's a different plant from like your average tea plant that they use to make green tea and black tea and the main teas on the market. So this tea, this plant that is yerba mate is a different plant altogether, and it actually is high in caffeine. So it's a really nice alternative from having your average tea, and I found it really nice. And then the ginseng and the ginkgo are good for energy and good for mental focus as well. And it also has lemongrass, spearmint leaves, nettle pieces and calendula, cornflower, and sunflower petals. So it has some nice florals in it too. And I find it a really nice rounded blend. Like I want to drink the whole cup. It's a bit herbal, but it also has some nice sweet floral notes in it. This is what I'm drinking today as we plan our garden, and it's a really nice drink. I'd highly recommend drinking it. So that's a little shout out to Teas. Okay, so we got our planner here. So this is the front page, and I also laminated the front to give it a nice waterproof front and also a nice finished look. And it's really nice when you do that as well. So you have that option when you purchase it, is you can print it off and you can laminate it and you can do whatever you like with it. And you can also put, I have the year, so you can put what year it is. So it's really nice watercolor look on the front. So the first page here is talking about our garden plan and the last season notes. So a big thing to remember when you're planning this year's garden is that you want to take notes of what you grew and the things that didn't work well and the things you want to remember from last season's gardening. And this is huge because I've found when it comes to gardening personally that you can sometimes make the same mistake year after year simply because you didn't properly plan or realize that was an issue during the gardening season. And that is where you can mark this down before you start planning your garden this year, is some things that basically didn't even grow well. If there's a variety that didn't grow well, surprisingly you can actually forget stuff like that from the past gardening season if you don't mark it down. So it really does help to just get your thoughts and your notes on paper of what you learned from the last season and how the season went. So some of the questions here are: what grew the best? So the crops that grew best, whether it's vegetables or flowers or herbs. What I had too much of, And this is a big one that I've struggled with. That, I grew a crop one year, and then the next year I did the same thing. I grew it again, and I grew too much of it, and twice in a row, because I didn't really realize, like, oh, I should have grown less of that. And it seems funny to think that that would be an issue, but it actually is. And another question is what didn't grow well. So that's a big one. So something that might have struggled, a crop that struggled. Like one time I had a cucumber problem. The pests, I had mice going after my cucumbers. So that was a big issue. And so I had to make some changes the following year. And I also had powdery mildew with it as well. So then the following year, because I thought, oh, I have to make changes with that, I was like, okay, I'm going to try trellising cucumbers this year to both get them off the ground so they have less soil problem, moisture problems with the soil being right there, and also have the mice can't reach them if they're climbing up a trellis, and that did help. So here you can write down what didn't grow well, what I didn't have enough of, and that's actually very helpful as well. If there's something that you didn't grow enough of, and then other challenges and pest issues I had, which is a big thing as well. And then this next page is simply where you mark down everything you grew. So you can mark down your flowers and your vegetables or your herbs. You can just make a whole master list. You can do little sections of it all on this page. So these two first pages are all about last season's gardening. So that's why I started off with this, is because I find it so important to take those last season notes, and you just put them all on paper. So you have a place where you can check back on your notes when you start planning this year. Honestly, sometimes we can get very excited about planning our garden, that we just want to go for it and get into it and start planting and starting our seeds and getting the garden beds ready, that we forget to address the issues that we had in the previous year, and that can create a cycle of frustration in the garden. So this is actually a very helpful tip, to just mark down some notes from the previous season of things that went on, just to have that log. So those 2 pages are for that. Okay, going on to the next page. So this is page 4, including the cover. So this is going to be getting into our garden plan, and this is where we mark down the year, and we get into my goals for this year's garden, changes I'm making to the garden, what new things I want to grow, what I'm starting indoors, and what I want to direct sow. So a tip I'd like to give, this is probably my number 1 tip when it comes to growing, is grow the vegetables, especially when it comes to vegetables. Grow the vegetables that you or your family or whoever it is you are with are going to eat on a regular basis. So if you love beans, for example, grow beans. If you love kale, grow kale. If you don't like kale and you see some good varieties for kale and you're like, oh, I should grow kale, but you absolutely don't like it, don't grow kale, because kale is very productive and you'll get lots of kale and you won't know what to do with it. I know, because that's happened to me, and I'm not a huge fan of kale, but some people love it, and that's when you can enjoy it. Not saying you can't try new things and try new vegetables. Not saying that at all. You can totally do what you like and try new things. I love trying new things. But if you don't like something and you plant a whole bunch of it, it's not the greatest problem to have. It's good to really like and want something because sometimes some crops can really produce, and then you're left with a whole bunch of something that you really don't want. So my number 1 tip is to grow something, grow the things that you know you're going to eat. And you know you're going to consume, and you also know what you're going to do with. So if you want to grow tomatoes, make sure you know what you're going to do with those tomatoes, because you can get an influx of tomatoes, but you can only eat so much fresh because they can be very acidic. So you have to have a plan. Okay, like I'm going to make salsa with them. I'm going to plan to do that for sure. I'm going to freeze some. I'm going to sun dry some. So make sure you have a plan, or just grow less of them. Don't grow too many of them, right? Just grow like a few varieties of cherry and a few beefsteak for like some sandwiches for fresh eating. and just stick with that, because the cherry ones you can tend to throw a lot in salads. You can roast them. You can use them more readily as like lots and lots of beefsteak tomatoes or medium-sized tomatoes. So yeah, that's something helpful to remember. And also just the fact that when each crop that you grow of a vegetable, it takes maintenance and attention and space as well. So if you want to grow something else and you have like lots of tomatoes and you want to grow another crop, then that won't help you. So it helps to, like, maybe if you want to do a couple tomato plants and then you want to grow lettuce as well, or you want to have space to grow something like beets or some potatoes, whatever it is. You don't want to have all the space used on one vegetable or one flower or one herb when you want to have the space for other things, because we only have so much space sometimes in our gardens, right? So you want to use that space efficiently and be able to have kind of the amounts that you need of each vegetable, and then you can grow what you like in a season. And you'll find sometimes that you don't need as much as you think sometimes with certain plants. You notice here it has my goals for this year's garden and changes I'm making to the garden. So this is where you would base the notes that you took last year on these kind of things. So you would take those notes and be like, okay, from what happened last season in the garden, what are my goals for this year's garden? So how am I going to make some improvements? And this ties in with the changes I'm making to the garden. So these two are mostly from that note-taking that we did from last season. So that's going to be helpful in that as well. So going to the next page is where you're going to write all that you want to grow, and that's for this season. So you're going to write down your vegetables, if you're growing any flowers and your herbs, whatever you have there, all you want to grow this season. This can be like a master list. And that's the nice thing about having a printable, is you can print off a few of these if you need to, of one particular page. So if you find you need more space here, you can print off another page of it. You can print off as many as you like, and that's the really nice thing. So the next page is simply some kind of a nice graph. It has nice large margins, and this is going to be, which is actually not my favorite thing to do, but it can be fun as well, is where you're going to plot out your garden beds. And this is where you can start planning them. So you can draw them out, draw out your layout for your garden if you're planning a new garden, or if you're just planning your existing garden. This is where you draw it out. And you can draw little squares or circles depending on what your garden looks like. And then you just start planning it, kind of where you're going to put some of your crops in it from there. A big tip I'd give you for this, because from personal experience, is be loose with it. Because I've found, like, I've drawn up so many plans and I like totally trash what I planned in the first place. When it comes to planting it, things change so quickly. So, and I decide to put things in other places. So just plan it loosely. You don't have to plan it too orderly. You can it's just basically giving you a bit of an idea of where things are going to go. And also, which is, I find important for something like planning this out, and I actually learned this when I took garden design in horticulture, is it helps to plan out where your light is coming in. So if you can figure out if you have like a south-facing sun yard or a southwest-facing, and just be able to kind of find where the light's coming in, and then you can kind of draw in your garden beds accordingly. And then you can kind of say, okay, in this section of the garden it gets less light, so what should I plant there, for example? What would go good in this part of the garden? Like if there's a tree there, if there's some sort of shade, and where does the light, like which way is my garden facing, and the beds. It can be a little bit complicated, so don't make it too complicated, but just have an idea where the sun is coming from, and then be able to plan which beds are going to be in full sun, which ones are going to be in like part shade, which ones are going to be in shade, and what other factors, like I said, trees are contributing to that. So going through the rest of the pages, these are mostly quite fun pages. I have a page for notes, little notes you want to put at the end, any other things you want to put, any highlights, anything you want to point out. And then here I have a little coloring page, so you can have some fun and do a little bit of coloring while you plan your garden bed. So that's quite fun as well. And then on the last page, I simply have some nice garden quotes as well. So it's kind of an inspiration to have at the end of your garden planning. So hopefully that will be an encouragement to you while you're planning your garden, because it doesn't have to be all work. It can be enjoyable as well, and inspirational and fun. So hopefully you found this video helpful. And if you're interested in purchasing the planner, it is on my website at gardengirlseeds.ca. And hopefully it can be a helpful tool in helping you plan this next year's garden. So thank you for joining me today. Keep growing. My name is Breanna. Have a great day.